This episode of Into the Music is brought to you by Coda Music. It's a great way to discover new music and listen to all of your favorite artists for free. The link is in the description. In today's episode we're going to explore Queen. Few bands embody the pure excess of the 70s like Queen. Embracing the exaggerated pomp of prog rock and heavy metal, as well as vaudevillian music hall, the British quartet delved deeply into camp and bombast, creating a huge, mock-operatic sound with layered guitars and overdubbed vocals. Queen's music was a bizarre yet highly accessible fusion of the macho and the fae. For years, their albums boasted the motto "No synthesizers" were used on this record, signaling their allegiance with the legions of post-Led Zeppelin hard rock bands. But vocalist Freddie Mercury brought an extravagant sense of camp to Queen, pushing them toward kitschy humor and pseudo-classical arrangements, as epitomized on their best-known song, Bohemian Rhapsody. Mercury, it must be said, was a flamboyant bisexual who managed to keep his sexuality in the closet until his death from AIDS in 1991. Through his legendary theatrical performances, Queen became one of the most popular bands in the world in the mid-70s. In England, they remained second only to the Beatles in popularity and collectibility into the 90s. Despite their enormous popularity, Queen were never taken seriously by rock critics. An infamous Rolling Stone review labeled their 1979 album Jazz as fascist. In spite of such harsh criticism, the band's popularity rarely waned. Even in the late 80s, the group retained a fanatical following except in America. In the States, their popularity peaked in the early 80s, just as they finished nearly a decade's worth of extraordinarily popular records. And while those records were never praised, they sold in enormous numbers, and traces of Queen's music could be heard in several generations of hard rock and metal bands in the next 2 decades, from Metallica to Smashing Pumpkins. The origins of Queen lay in the hard rock psychedelic group Smile, which guitarist Brian May and drummer Roger Taylor joined in 1967. Following the departure of Smile's lead vocalist, Tim Staffel, in 1971, May and Taylor formed a group with Freddie Mercury, the former lead singer for Wreckage. Within a few months, bassist John Deacon joined them, and they began rehearsing. Over the next 2 years, as all 4 members completed college, they simply rehearsed, playing just a handful of gigs. By 1973, they had begun to concentrate on their career, releasing their debut album, Queen, that year and setting out on their first tour. Queen was more or less a straight metal album and failed to receive much acclaim, but Queen 2 became an unexpected British breakthrough early in 1974. Before its release, the band played Top of the Pops, performing 7 Seas of Rye. Both the song and the performance were smash successes, and the single rocketed into the top 10, setting the stage for Queen 2 to reach number 5. Following its release, the group embarked on its first American tour, supporting Mott the Hoople. On the strength of their campily dramatic performances, the album climbed to number 43 in the States. Queen released their 3rd album, Sheer Heart Attack, before the end of 1974. The music hall meets Zeppelin Killer Queen climbed to number 2 on the UK charts, taking the album to number 2 as well. Sheer Heart Attack made some inroads in America as well, setting the stage for the breakthrough of 1975's A Night at the Opera. Queen labored long and hard over the record. According to many reports, it was the most expensive rock record ever made at the time of its release. The first single from the record, Bohemian Rhapsody, became Queen's signature song, and with its bombastic, mock-operatic structure punctuated by heavy metal riffing, it encapsulates their music. It is also the symbol for their musical excesses. The song took 3 weeks to record, and there were so many vocal overdubs on the record that it was possible to see through the tape at certain points. To support Bohemian Rhapsody, Queen shot one of the first conceptual music videos, and the gamble paid off as the single spent 9 weeks at number 1 in England, breaking the record for the longest run at number 1. The song and A Night at the Opera were equally successful in America, as the album climbed into the top 10 and quickly went platinum. Following A Night at the Opera, Queen were established as superstars, and they quickly took advantage of all their status had to offer. Their parties and indulgence quickly became legendary in the rock world, yet they continued to work at a rapid rate. In the summer of 1976, they performed a free concert at London's Hyde Park that broke attendance records, and they released the hit single Somebody to Love a few months later. It was followed by A Day at the Races, which was essentially a scaled-down version of A Night at the Opera that reached number 1 in the UK and number 5 in the US. They continued to pile up its singles in both Britain and America over the next 5 years, as each of their albums went into the top 10, always going gold and usually platinum in the process. Because Queen embraced such mass success and adoration, they were scorned by the rock press, especially when they came to represent all of the worst tendencies of the old guard in the wake of punk. Nevertheless, the public continued to buy Queen records. Featuring the top 5 double-sided single We Are the Champions / We Will Rock You, News of the World became a top 10 hit in 1977. The following year, jazz nearly replicated that success, with the single Fat Bottomed Girls / Bicycle Race becoming an international hit despite the massive bad publicity surrounding their media stunt of staging a nude female bicycle race. Queen were at the height of their popularity as they entered the 80s, releasing The Game, their most diverse album to date, in 1980. On the strength of 2 #1 singles, the campy rockabilly Crazy Little Thing Called Love and the disco-fied Another One Bites the Dust, The Game became the group's first American #1 album. However, the bottom fell out of the group's popularity, particularly in the US, shortly afterward. Their largely instrumental soundtrack to Flash Gordon was coldly received later in 1980. With the help of David Bowie, Queen were able to successfully compete with the new wave with the 1981 hit single Under Pressure, their first UK #1 since Bohemian Rhapsody, which was included both on their 1981 Greatest Hits and 1982's Hot Space. Instead of proving the group's vitality, Under Pressure was a last gasp. Hot Space was only a moderate hit, and the more rock-oriented The Works' 1984 also was a minor hit, with only Radio Gaga receiving much attention. Shortly afterward, they left Elektra and signed with Capitol. Faced with their decreased popularity in the US and waning popularity in Britain, Queen began touring foreign markets, cultivating a large, dedicated fan base in Latin America, Asia, and Africa, continents that most rock groups ignored. In 1985, they returned to popularity in Britain in the wake of their show-stopping performance at Live Aid. The following year, they released A Kind of Magic to strong European sales, but they failed to make headway in the States. The same fate befell 1989's A Miracle, yet 1991's Innuendo was greeted more favorably, going gold and peaking at number 30 in the US. Nevertheless, it still was a far bigger success in Europe, entering the UK charts at number 1. By 1991, Queen had drastically scaled back their activity, causing many rumors to circulate about Freddie Mercury's health. On November 23, he issued a statement confirming that he was stricken with AIDS. He died the next day. The following spring, the remaining members of Queen held a memorial concert at Wembley Stadium that was broadcast to an international audience of more than 1 billion. Featuring such guest artists as David Bowie, Elton John, Annie Lennox, Def Leppard, and Guns N' Roses, the concert raised millions for the Mercury Phoenix Trust, which was established for AIDS awareness. The concert coincided with a revival of interest in Bohemian Rhapsody, which climbed to number 2 in the US and number 1 in the UK in the wake of its appearance in the Mike Myers comedy Wayne's World. Following Mercury's death, the remaining members of Queen were fairly quiet. Brian May released his second solo album, Back to the Light, in 1993, 10 years after the release of his first record. Roger Taylor cut a few records with The Cross, which he had been playing with since 1987, while Deacon essentially retired. The three reunited in 1994 to record backing tapes for vocal tracks Mercury recorded on his deathbed. The resulting album, Made in Heaven, was released in 1995 to mixed reviews and strong sales, particularly in Europe. Crown Jewels, a box set repackaging their first 8 LPs, followed in 1998. Archival live recordings, DVDs, and compilations kept appearing through the new millennium. The Queen name was revived in 2005, but this time with plus Paul Rodgers appended to it. Rodgers, the former lead singer of Free and Bad Company, joined Brian May and Roger Taylor. John Deacon remained retired for several live shows, one of which was documented on 2005's Return of the Champions, a double-disc release issued by the Hollywood label. International touring continued, as did a new studio album featuring Rodgers' vocals. Released under the Queen plus Paul Rodgers tag, The Cosmos Rocks appeared in September 2008, followed by an American release 1 month later. Reception was decidedly mixed. Rogers departed from Queen in 2009 and in his wake came a new compilation called Absolute Greatest. TV appearances followed over the next 2 years, including a spot on the 2009 American Idol finale where they performed with Adam Lambert, and then in 2010 Queen wound up leaving their home of Emmy for Ireland, which brought all of the group's recordings to Universal Records. A new round of reissues followed in 2011, along with the performance with Lambert at the MTV Europe Music Awards, and the vocalist soon became a fixture with the band, as Queen performed several big concerts and television performances in 2012 and 2013, followed by a full tour in 2014. Also that year, Queen released another compilation, Queen Forever, which was anchored by reworked versions of 3 old songs, including a solo number by Mercury where he duetted with Michael Jackson. The archival live album, A Night at the Odeon, featuring the band's 1975 Christmas Eve performance at London's Hammersmith Odeon, appeared in 2015. Over the next 2 years, the band stayed active appearing live with Lambert. In 2018, Queen was the subject of the biopic film Bohemian Rhapsody, which starred Rami Malek as Freddie Mercury. The band contributed to the soundtrack, which featured classic tracks as well as live recordings and several songs reworked for the film.